it's Shari here today, and I'm going to be making this fun laundry reveal wheel card inspired by one of our other design team members, Megan. So I'm going to put all my stamps in my MISTI here. I'm using images from Loads of Fun, as well as this little dog that's from Let's Play. And I'm also going to use the little sleeping cat from Christmas Dreams. And I'm going to use the lawnfawn jet black ink because I'm going to be doing some Copic coloring. I'm also going to do some stamping on the wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my wheel out of the top part of this piece of white cardstock. I'm going to use the big scallop wheel from the reveal wheel set as well as the little one. And now that my wheel's cut out, I'm going to use some images from the little bundle stamp set. So I'm going to use these little baby socks. I stamped out a big sock there, but I decided I wanted to use the baby socks because I'm making a baby card. And I'm making a baby card for a boy. So I'm going to stamp out the overalls and the little onesie, but I'm going to avoid the dress. So you can customize this for whatever gender card you're making. I'm also going to put some of those socks in there, but I'm only going to ink up one of them so that I don't have two socks perfectly together because it would not be that way in the laundry. So now I'm going to do some coloring, and this video is a little long, so I'm going to speed up all my coloring, and if you want to skip ahead because you don't want to watch the coloring, please do so. So I'm just coloring my cat with some warm grays, doing a little bit of easy shading. Then I'm going to go in with my darkest one and add some stripes just for some detail. Now moving on to my little dog, I am going to put down a layer of my lighter of the two browns that I'm using, and then instead of doing shading, I'm just going to use the darker one to create some subtle spots. For the laundry, I'm using some pastel colors. I didn't want it too bright. I wanted this to look a lot of shades of blue with just a couple parts with some other colors pulled in. So I'm using some pastel colors, and I'm going back with the exact same color to add some slight shading to the bottom of each piece of laundry. Now for the basket, I added some pale browns, some E00 and E000. And then I went and blended it all out with a very pale cool gray, just to kind of give it a white look, but also a cream look, sort of like a laundry basket. And then I went in the little openings with those colors I used for the laundry and just added a little bit more, like you're seeing the laundry through the basket. Now on to color my washing machine, and I'm just going to color the outside of the window because I'm going to be cutting out the inside, so I don't need to color the whole thing. For the machine itself, I'm using some cool grays, and I started with the darkest one in the corners, and I'm just blending it out with some lighter colors. So to kind of look like a white washing machine, but I don't want it to just be stark white. I want it to look like it has some dimension. I'll use the darkest color for the very bottom, as well as for the frame around the washing machine window. Now I'm going to color the wheel that goes in the washing machine. So I'm, again, sticking with my blues since I'm making a baby boy card, and coloring the overalls with some blues. I'm also going to color the little hat with some blue, with just a little bit of easy shading. And then for the items that are going to be white, I'm going to use a pale gray, and I'm just going to outline it with that C1, kind of blend that out with a C00, and then go in with my colorless blender and completely blend it out. So it looks a little gray right now, but once that blender dries, it'll look white with a little gray outline. I'm also adding one blue sock, and you'll see why later. I plan on having a second blue sock outside of the washing machine. So I am just tracing each of these to give it a little bit darker right around each piece of clothing with a BG10. And then I'm going to go in with the BG000 to blend it out and color this whole wheel. But I realized that my marker was actually pretty dry. So I changed to a B000, which is pretty similar in color, and just finished coloring all the way out to the edges. Now to cut out all my pieces, I'm using all the coordinating dies that go with all of these sets, and I'm just going to hold them in place temporarily with some washi tape. So I'll run that through my die cut machine, and now I have all these pieces to help me put my scene together. Now I did not end up using some of these pieces, but I will just keep them for a future project. I'm going to put my pieces in this little bowl here so I don't lose them as I continue to work. Now I'm going to work on the panel that my little scene is going to go on. So I have the Gotta Have Gingham 6x6 paper pad, and I'm going to pick out the purple gingham that is orthogonal rather than diagonal. This is kind of going to be the wallpaper of my laundry room. I'm also going to use the Perfectly Plaid Chill paper, and I'm going to pick out the orthogonal dark blue plaid, and this is going to be the floor of my laundry room. So I have the outside rectangle of the reveal wheel die set, and I've removed the window. So I'm not going to cut a window with the piece that comes in this set. I'm going to cut the window with a circle die here in just a little bit. I'm also turning it to where the little cutout is on the left side towards the bottom. And this is so that the wheel can be towards the bottom of my card and my washing machine can be more towards the bottom of my card instead of sort of floating in the air. So I'm just using the grid of the pattern to kind of line it up straight and then cut it out with the die cut machine. So you can see now that's going to line up and my washing machine is going to be more towards the bottom and I can stamp a sentiment on top. So now I've got the dark blue plaid paper and I'm just lining it up near the bottom. I'm going to use the piece I've already cut as a guide to line up my panel die, and I'm just going to hold that in place. And I've kind of got it tacked down, but I'm just going to double check that it's lined up with the grid of the plaid, and that way I know it's straight. So that's going to be the floor of my laundry room for my washing machine to sit on. Now I'm going to assemble some of these pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and put this dark blue along the bottom of my gingham panel. And the reason why I'm going to go ahead and do this is because I'm going to need to cut a circle out of this panel, and I would rather cut both of these pieces at the same time because it is going to overlap that dark piece slightly. So I'm going to be using some circle dies to cut my openings here. I'm going to use two sizes. This one is slightly smaller than the window. You can see that the cutting edge is on the outside. So you can see right where it's going to cut is right inside those two lines. I'm just going to hold that down with some tape and run that through my die cut machine to cut the opening that we're going to see the wheel through. So I'm going to line this up on my background where I want it, and I'm going to trace that circle. I'm sort of using my gingham again as a guide. I'm going to trace that circle so that I know where to cut my other circle. Now this one is slightly bigger, and the reason why is so that I don't have to line them up perfectly. I've got a little wiggle room, and there's no chance of the window behind showing through the window in the front. So you can see here, it's easy to line up. It's not too big, it's not going to show behind, and I can line it up from the back side just like that too. I'm also going to cut a piece of acetate with the washing machine die, and I'm cutting this on top of a piece of scrap cardstock, and that's just because my cutting plates are very cut up, and when I try to cut acetate without doing this, I get lots of pieces on it and it kind of gets scratched up. So this is more of a protection on my particular cutting plate. I'm going to use some adhesive runner, and I'm just going to put that piece of plastic on the back side of the washing machine, and this is going to create the look of the washing machine window. So I realized that a lot of my clothes are kind of outside that window, and the middle seemed a little sparse. So what I decided to do was add a couple more of the socks. So I had cut these two little socks out. I was going to use one on the outside of the washing machine, and I'll make another one. I'm putting those little bubbles over the hole because that's going to cover up my brad. And so I just put it there as a guide. And I'm just adding these so that they kind of fill the center space a little more and you see more through the window. Now I'm also cutting a cream cardstock panel. This is vanilla malt cardstock, and this is going to be the back. And I'm going to turn it to where the cutout is on the other side. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to stamp on that cardstock, and I kind of want it to be different than my craft colored card base that I have there. So it's just a little different way to use the die. You could also use one of the rectangles that's the exact same size and not worry about the second cutout that's on the back. Now to assemble this, it's a little different. I'm using a very small brad and I'm putting it through the front. When we've done these before, we put them through the back. But in this case, we're going to do it through the front. And it's okay because we don't need to take it apart because we're already done all our stamping. It's already done. Then I'm going to put the foam on that small circle that's on the back, and you can see it spins freely there. I'm going to line this up with my circle, just eyeballing it to where it is centered. And then I can lay these two pieces together and my wheel will be in the right spot. Now to add the washing machine onto my front panel. And I'm adding some adhesive, and I really wish I paid a little more attention when I did this because you'll see why here in a minute. I had some adhesive outside of the opening. But to line it up, I'm going to stick it kind of from the back side. So I'm doing this so I can see exactly where my circle is. And I'm just going to barely pick it up so that it sticks. And then when I turn it around, I can use the grid of my pattern papers to make sure it's straight and just sort of slightly adjust it before pressing down and making sure it's stuck down. Now where I messed up is the fact that some of my adhesive is sticking out of that larger circle. So I'm going to use my adhesive eraser and just remove that adhesive so that it doesn't stick to the wheel and everything inside moves freely. I also use my powder tool to kind of deactivate the stickiness of the adhesive as well. So now I am doing some embossing, and I use my powder tool on the bottom there, the anti-static tool. I'm going to use some Versamark ink, which is clear sticky ink, and then I'm also using the lawnfawn white embossing powder. And I'm just doing the white embossing on this part of the sentiment just so it stands out really well on that dark blue background. Now for the sentiment that goes across the top, it says a little bundle is on the way. So I'm just lining those pieces up, and I'm going to stamp that in some Blue Jay ink to go along with the blue colors that I have on my card. Now to continue to assemble my card, I'm going to add the basket of laundry, as well as the sleeping cat. I just thought he looked really cute sleeping by the laundry. And then the little mischievous dog is on top. And then one of my favorite parts about Megan's card that this card's inspired by was that she had a sock on the dog's head. I decided to change it up and make sure that it was one of those little socks. Since I'm doing baby clothes and a baby card, it needed to be a baby sock on its head. Now I'm using some glue dots here, and these are micro glue dots, so they're very, very small. And I'm going to use these to stick these little tiny bubbles over the center to cover up the brad. And these are going to stick on the outside of the acetate. So I'm just going to line up the wheel and all the pieces here just so I can see where my brad is. I'm going to stick that down on the front. And you can see that's on the outside of the acetate, and that will cover up that brad. Now I also still felt like I needed to fill the center slightly, so there is a really tiny star in this set. There's also some hearts and a flower, and I just thought it would be kind of cute to add a couple of these in there. Sort of magical laundry, I guess, but I think it helps fill the space a little bit. Now I'm going to add some foam tape, and I'm going to double this up. So everywhere I put a piece, I'm going to put a second piece on top. I'm just going to peel off that backer and just layer it with another piece. And I'm going to add a whole bunch of this to this back panel here. Now I about messed up here. I kept it in so you could see. I forgot that's where the notch is. So I don't want to put a piece of adhesive there. So I caught myself in time. And I'm going to trace it with a pencil just so I know where that notch is located, and I'll erase those pencil lines when I'm done. The same goes for the other side because there's a notch on the other side, but I'm going to want that to stick to the card base and have some support on that side too. So I'm just putting that foam adhesive on the back of the front piece. So I'm going to erase those pencil lines that I drew earlier. I've got all the liner pieces pulled off of my adhesive, and I can layer these two together. Just make sure they're lined up. And then that piece right there that's still sticky will just stick to the card base. So I'm going to use the Tombow Extreme adhesive just to make sure everything's stuck down really well. And then I will just center it and line it up in my card and stick that whole assembly right to the card base. And I like to kind of rub it from the back, make sure it's stuck down well. So you can see that piece of foam there stuck to the card base, and now that little corner is supported as well. To finish off, I'm going to stamp the little sentiment that says "Turn Me," and I'm stamping it again in the Forget Me Not ink, which is also what I use for the little stars. And I'm going to stamp that on that cream cardstock. So I flipped that so that I kind of had the contrast and it wasn't just the brown all the way around. It really just kept it making a frame, and the cream becomes part of what's inside the frame. And there is the finished card. I just think that is super fun, and thanks Megan for the inspiration. So here's another look. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.